Did you know that we have a forgotten history? In my last three videos, I explained that a group of people from Asia traveled to different regions, moved south, and then arrived in Anatolia from southern Iran, as well as extending from Anatolia to the west, to Thrace, and even to the banks of the Danube River. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the Etruscans. The Etruscans are a society, a culture that spread throughout almost all of Italy, arriving in the region around 1200 years before Christ. And to tell you how they got there, let me talk about the R1 haplogroup, which is, I spoke about a group of genes. And in this map, we can see that their origin was Asia, to be more precise, the Altai mountain region, and that this area is a region on the border of Kazakhstan, Russia, China, and Mongolia. And from there they moved south and then to Anatolia. After displaying this map, I'm going to show a second map. This is seen on the map. The second map displays the distribution of the R1b gene group. After the people carrying R1a lived in Anatolia for a few thousand years, there was a slight change in their genes due to nutritional reasons and a change in their diet. And this new gene group was called R1b. This is where you can see the distribution of the R1b group on the map, the red areas. This map shows us that the same gene is found in Anatolia, and from there in the Balkans, along the Danube coasts, and even in Italy. This map also shows that there was a close relationship with the Vinca culture and the Etruscans, which I described earlier in chapter 3. Our clear relationship with the Vinca culture and the Etruscans is shown on this map. The map shows the Vinca spread and the Etruscan area following it. 1200 years BC, people that came to the Alps came from Central Europe, and they moved west along the Danube coast, came to the Alps through Switzerland, crossed the mountains and settled there. The people who settled there gave the mountains the name Alp, which is actually a Turkish word. Indeed, Alpatunga, Alpaslan. Names like Alperen, names of significant individuals. These names start with Alp, which clearly indicates that the word Turk is a language, a word of the Turks. And the meaning of Alp is great and sublime. That is, these are the people who call the mountains Alp because they define the mountains as great and sublime. And these people are Turks from Asia. I believe this, but where did they go? They came to the Valcamonica region. The Valcamonica region, well, as you can see on this map, is a region south of the Alps, completely north of Italy. And there they drew pictures of their own culture on the rocks. And from those rock paintings, we get an idea of the culture of these people. Now, as you can see, things like these rock paintings on the left show a warrior standing on a horse with a spear in one hand and a shield in the other. His stance on the horse is a very interesting visual. And on the right, we see a drawing of a four-wheeled chariot pulled by two horses. So these people came with their horses and carts. They came with their carts. Their presence is an indication that they came not only as warriors, but also with all the clan, wives, and children. Even though the people who came here are commonly referred to as Etruscans, they were actually two different tribes who arrived, the Turla and the Oskla, or Arrows. The name Arrow is a Turkish word that bears meaning, much like the region of Turan and the city of Turfan that I mentioned earlier. Thus, the people who came from there started calling themselves the Turan tribe. Along with them, the Arrows also came, indicating that they shared the same culture. spoke the same language, held the same faith, and used the same script. Indeed, when Rome gained power and dominated that region, it gave the Turla and Oskla a collective name, E-Tur-Osk. E-Tur-Osk means tours and arrows. Indeed, the word E has made its way from Latin to Italian, and then in French, E means and. Hence, the tours and arrows have transformed into Etruscans. These people who came there also drew other sorts of intriguing rock paintings. For instance, this rock painting you see on the left is from Val Camonica, Italy, drawn in that area. On the right, we can see the nearly identical image drawn on the rocks here in Kyrgyzstan. We see there's a shared culture and belief. We understand that these people living in Kyrgyzstan arrived over time, and if you're curious about what this shape means, I'll share my opinion. I believe these shapes represent the sun and convey a sun cult. As I mentioned previously, the sun is the core symbol of the belief system of the people who migrated from Asia. Therefore, I believe it was a sun cult. You can see on this map the settlements of the people who arrived in the Tur and Osk regions. Turs settled in the west and north regions of Italy, while the Oskas or Arrows settled in the east and immediately in the eastern and southern regions. The Turs arrived in 1200 BC, and the Arrows arrived in roughly the same period. In 700 BC, nearly 500 years after the arrival of these Turs and Arrows, southern Lydia Lilar, Lycia Lilar, and somewhat Phrygs have arrived. It means a group of people who came with the mix of Greeks, and they also settled in the south of the Italian peninsula, or say this boot, and settled on the shores of Sicily. It means that the arrival is much later, but the regions where Tur and Osks are is still present in Italy, and indeed there is the Tuscany region. It is a Tur and Osk region. There is the region or city of Tuscany and Tarquinia. It is also the city of Tarkan. This means that these people, those who came there, also came with their leaders, and they called the leaders Tarkan. The meaning of Tarkan is ball. Hakimi, because we still use the word tar in Turkish today, a cultivated garden is called a tar. Therefore, Tarhan is a word that means an inn with a cultivated garden, that is, in a way, the ruler of that region. Indeed, between 616 BC and 579 BC, Tarquinius Priscus, an Etruscan king, ruled Rome for quite a long time. From this name, Tarquinius, the ius ending, which we know is Latin, we also infer that Tarkan is Latin, and a Tarkan who is a prince ruled here. There's also the region of Tarquinia, and in a way we could say that the Etruscan culture is still living there. On this map, we see the settlement area of Tur and Osca. In 700 BC, Rome was just a small town. It wasn't even a city. We see how small an area they occupy on this map, a small group of settled people. On the other hand, the Etruscans and Oscans were much larger and sprawled over a wider area. Later on, when Rome established an army and expanded, the Roman people took control of all these so-called Etruscans and Oscans. Why did they take control of the Etruscans? Because Etruscans were very curious about art, dance, music, and they were not warriors. Indeed, what you see in this statue is the Etruscan king. This is a statue of him along with his wife, found in an Etruscan tomb and was then taken to the museum. In fact, this woman, whom you might call the Etruscan queen, her hair braid is a completely Asian-style braid, and with this feature the Etruscans expressed that these two are equally important. That is, the king and queen were equal. They were also contributing to the administration, and because they were artists, they drew pictures on the walls called frescoes, painted colorful paintings. So here we see three painted colored paintings. On the left there's a man playing a flute. In the center a woman is dancing, and on the right a man and woman are dancing opposite each other. In other words, the Etruscans. These kinds of paintings vividly show us how much importance they attach to art, dance, and music. Now the question arises, were the Etruscans really Turkish? On this subject, a woman named Adil Ida, who served as an ambassador to Italy, has written a book called Were the Etruscans Turkish? She wrote this book in both Turkish and French. The French title of the book is Les Etrusques, while in Turkish it is Etetil. In other words, were the Etruscans Turkish? And on this subject, she studied, researched, examined their inscriptions and letters, deciphered their words, and managed to publish these books. But for some unknown reason, our Turkologists, linguists, historians do not touch this issue in whatever capacity, and Adil Ida's book is even today very hard to find. Why? Because neither has it been reprinted, nor has any information from the book been researched, published, or expanded in any manner. So he remained thus. In this image we see a photo of Miss Adil Ida in the center. On the right we see her Turkish book on the Etruscans, and on the left we see a newspaper article about her. Now Adilai, who has studied the language and script of the Etruscans, proposed how similar these inscriptions were to the Orkhon inscriptions on this matter. She had even made suggestions in this picture. We see the Orkhon letters on the left, the Osk letters, and the Etruscan letters on the right we see, so what we call an arrow or oke. In fact, the Latins translated this word as osk, but the similarity is obvious, although not the same, because the culture came from the south and interacted with Greek culture and Greek letters. It underwent some changes in the end, and the form of the letters changed. We can now conclude the Etruscans were a Ural-Altaic people who started from Asia, arrived in northern Italy via Switzerland, and their language is a Ural-Altaic language. And their inscriptions are also very similar to the Orkhon inscriptions. The Etrusc language is still an undeciphered language. Despite their efforts, they cannot comprehend it by comparing to Latin or Greek. They can't find any meaningful words, and Etruscan is still regarded as unsolved worldwide. However, if it is examined with Orkhon script and similarities with Turkish are exposed, a matter requiring specialized study, then this resemblance will open up a new horizon for us, and it will be proven that they were Turks. The Italians have conducted research on this. They have done genetic studies and examined the remains of Etruscans. They have also analyzed the statues, or rather, the bones, and mapped out their genetic profiles. From those studies, they reached a notable conclusion. There's significant similarity between the Etruscan and Turkish genes. The Turkish genes show up 3 times more in Etruscan gene pool compared to the genes of all other peoples. So here I am presenting the research they've conducted. They've published an article in the American Journal of Human Genetics titled Etruscan. This was published in 2004 and was done by the Italians. I would like you to pay attention to it as well. Quite a few, meaning 10 Italian genetic experts, have reached this conclusion. Thank you.